Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is the Professor, the Goat Man, Timmy V, and the Goat Men, as the name of his band. He's also an amateur stand-up comedian, amateur comic book writer, artist extraordinaire, and also amateur in general at things. Tim's here.
Yeah, I mean, why be good at one thing when you can be, okay at a lot of things?
Also amateur podcaster. There you go. I should mention that one.
Yeah.
I guess that one's self-explanatory, though.
Sure, yeah.
We're here. Yes. Jack of all trades, Tim of all trades. Tim, yeah. Yes, we talk about horror movies on this show. And the main attraction this week is, of course, going to be Brightburn, which came out earlier this year. And much like a lot of films this year, we got screwed over by having different release dates, so we had to wait for the whole video version before we could do it for the show. But we are going to finally do the Man of Steel... I don't want to call it parody, that's not the right word, but there's definitely the evil Superman inspired Brightburn,
sure,
which I was very curious about because its entire premise was very much taking Superman and specifically Man of Steel, because the trailer, if you go back and watch the trailers for this movie, it's intentionally actually emulating Man of Steel. The font, down to the font choice of the text that's coming up on the screen is very Man of Steel. The shots of the farm is very Man of Steel, and it's very intentional. And I think even some of the music in the trailer and in the movie as well is definitely aping the style of Man of Steel. It's essentially the idea of what if Superman landed on Earth, but instead he was a complete and utter psychopath and terrifying from a young age. That is the gist of Brightburn. We'll start spoiler free, of course, and we'll warn you before we go into spoilers somewhere in the middle of the discussion, but we'll leave it there. So, Tim, giving that description, and were you intrigued by this? Were you curious about the premise?
Oh yeah, definitely. I was really intrigued by it. I think this is another one that, again, I wanted to go out in theaters, and then I just kind of, unfortunately, the timing didn't work out, and I don't think it was in theaters super long. But I also got like a little down on it because I don't feel like too many people are happy about it. Like the kind of like takes I've seen from a lot of people were like it's fine. Like, yeah, I don't think I saw many people saying like it was bad or anything, but it seems like a lot of people were just like leaving the theater going like, oh yeah, it was okay. But I mean, still, obviously the premise did intrigue me, and then yeah, it's kind of interesting to have like, these worlds collide because, obviously we're both big comic book fans, especially you, like, being a big DC fan, and then, but, also being big horror fans, it was interesting to see those worlds meld. So it does sound like, something that should be up our alleys.
Yeah, and something else that I'm going to talk about a little bit from time to time, although I'll try and do it without any spoiling anything, but it's interesting that we finally got to see this just after The Boys hit on Amazon Prime.
Sure.
Which I watched with Connor, and we reviewed all that, and that has evil Justice League types in it, including a Superman who goes by the Homelander and has all of Superman's powers. It's not exactly like the character in Brightburn, but there's definitely some moments and parallels to take from it.
Yeah, well, that was one thing that was kind of like ticking me off a little bit, because I do remember, like, I think when this was first announced and the trailer hit and everything, I did see a lot of people like saying stuff like, "Oh my God, like this is brilliant! What like a great idea! I can't believe no one's ever thought of this." And like, as comic book people, we know it's like evil Superman is not a new idea. Like, it's been, I think, around quite a while.
I think the new idea of it, though, is the idea of just doing a straight up horror movie where it's no, he's a serial killer.
Oh, sure.
Like, treating it like this is what's the new idea. Evil Superman, I mean, you got Ultraman from Earth 3 who's evil Superman. You've got all these different things. Like, we've had evil Superman in a variety of ways, but the idea of treating like a horror movie and just presenting him as scary as shit, like, no, if he's this powerful, no one has a chance. And that's the scary part of it. And yeah. So
and specifically with him being like and then like especially with him being like a kid, it reminded me a lot of Supreme Power from like Marvel in the like I think it was the early 2000s.
In the 1960s, the 1800s, the early 1900s. Marvel comics were doing this.
But when they did their like Max take on like the Squadron Supreme, which all of those were Justice League analogs, but they who is the Superman one is Hyperion, but that series specifically like kind of starts off with him as like a little kid and being kind of creepy and stuff. So it reminded me a lot of that.
Just to compare it to the Homelander and the Boys, because there are an evil Superman that's kind of in pop culture now. I would say Homelander's the idea is that he didn't have the right upbringing, so he has a really warped morality and just essentially doesn't care what anyone else thinks, and he's kind of a petulant child who happens to be in the body of Superman, right? The character in Brightburn, if I just scroll down and get his name because I've forgotten it, Brandon Breyer. So they had the alliteration like Clark Kent, which is a neat touch. He on the other hand is a lot more like a Michael Myers, where he is just kind of evil incarnate after like a couple of years. He just so before we get any further into like discussing what the movie is, though, we should really answer the burning question at hand, the brightly burning question at hand. Tim, how do you feel about Brightburn?
I mean, I hate to say it, but I don't know, I kind of feel like I had the same reaction I was seeing most people having, where I'm just like, it's fine. Like, it's not, it wasn't as good as I was hoping. Like, I don't think it really lived up to the premise, but, it wasn't like a horrible movie. Like, I think there was some cool stuff. I think especially like once he is actually using his powers and like, there's kills and death and gore, I thought that stuff was done really well. I think the big problem with it is everything is so surface level. Like, the plot is just like there's like no nuance or anything to it. Like the characters are just not that interesting. And like you were saying, I wanted more personality from the kid, but he just feels like such a blank slate. Like it's just like, it doesn't really you don't really get much of a motivation or what, why he's doing this. And, they kind of hint to some stuff, but they never really, I feel like, fully answer. But, I just, I don't know, other than like the death scenes, which I thought were cool, it was just kind of a very like, kind of meh movie to me.
Yeah, I'm not too far off that opinion. I think it's a fine movie. It's like, I kind of agree with you that it's the death scenes and the gore when they happen where the movie kind of I actually think one of the biggest problems this movie had is that there's trailers for it. Like, I feel like not that the trailers spoiled too much necessarily, although there was certainly a long time in the movie before I got to a scene where I didn't know how it was going to end because I'd seen most of these LA scenes in the trailer. It was more like this. I wish I'd stumbled onto this on TV at like midnight one night without knowing what it was, because I think the realization whilst watching it that it's doing Superman but it's doing this version of it would have really been an interesting discovery. But because I knew that going in, because I'd already seen the trailer and already knew it was doing the Man of Steel, they made Superman too dark, so we're going to take it to the extreme and make him an absolute serial killer. Because I already knew that going in, they made a lot of the first half of the movie kind of like, okay, we're playing through these beats, but it didn't really do enough to make it interesting. I think it's kind of unsatisfying that Brandon Breyer is just kind of like, it's like a light switch. Like, there's no like build to him becoming evil or anything like that. He just is triggered. It's basically the scene in Superman where Superman hears the ship and it makes him go and find the Fortress of Solitude, right? It's basically that scene, but instead of like doing that, it just sort of triggers him into an evil being. And from that point on, there's no like wrestling with his conscience. There's no like, there's a good person in there who can fight back or anything like that. It's just now he's just completely evil and there's no saving him. Like, that's it, he's just gone. Like I think we really just need like more characterization from him, because like evil Superman is interesting if you're following the character and you're seeing his spiral, and then like you still want to maybe see him wrestling with these ideas, or like maybe he's trying to be good but in his own like warped sense or whatever, but it just feels so boring just to be like, no, he's evil, like that's it. And then in other movies it can work, like in
Halloween, obviously, like it's that simplicity that is great, but you know, in this, you want a lot more to it than that.
The difference with Halloween, because we're comparing it to Michael Myers, the big difference there, I think, is that the reason why that's interesting is because he's normal otherwise, right? And
Sure, yeah.
the interesting part is that he is this evil incarnate, despite the fact that there's no reason for him to be. I think doing that with a character like this is a lot less interesting because he's already very different and special and very unique. And I think, you know, you said it was very surface level because it is just, okay, we're doing Superman that's evil, and there's not really much characterization or build to that. It just kind of happens. I think what the movie really needed was some subtext where it was also about something else. You know,
Sure.
whether it was about like maybe, you know, it could have been a commentary on parenting, and like maybe the reason why he doesn't understand right from wrong is because his parents were just coddling him too much and they were too scared to like discipline him or whatever. Or maybe it could be a commentary on like toxic masculinity, that, you know, at this age, because he has this much power, the second that he's triggered or threatened by another male or by like, you know, anything like that, because he's got this crush on a girl in his class, and you're kind of worried that, oh, is he going to do something really bad because he's got the power to do so. Because the one thing I came out of this movie thinking about the world was that, well, it's a good thing kids are weaker because we have to be able to discipline them until they learn right from wrong.
True.
If they're this powerful, then we're really screwed. Because imagine if kids were as strong as a fully grown person, right? From the age of like 5,
geez.
like it would be a nightmare, right? Because part of the reason we're able to like control them is because they're smaller and we can contain them a bit better. You know,
Okay.
If we have to beat up a kid, we know we can take them. Typically speaking.
Well, I'm sure one of us can.
How dare you? How dare you? Do I have to go beat up a 6-year-old just to prove that I can take one on?
I'd like to see that. Yeah, I'd love to get you in the ring with one of those, like, have you ever seen those like bodybuilder babies?
Oh yeah. Oh dear. But you know, like I thought it may have some, you know, have some subtext and use its ridiculous premise to talk about either parenting or childhood or the pressures put upon someone at that age and how it can mess them up. You know, like say something about something, and instead all it's really doing is saying something, or it's a movie that takes itself very seriously. There's not a lot of humor in this. It takes itself very, very seriously, which again would be fine if with more subtext. But the problem is that the whole thing is basically just we're making fun of Man of Steel, but we're doing it in a very dead serious way, and because of that, it never really kind of becomes its own thing. Now that said, though, I do want to make this very clear: is that I actually think it's a very easy watch. I think, you know, if we're comparing this to other movies that we do, that we sit here and we complain about, I actually think Brightburn is a very capable, like, dependable movie that is directed well enough. With it's got a good cast, so even though the characters aren't that great, they're not, you know, like Elizabeth Banks and what's Roy from The Office's name, David Denman, like they're both solid, you know, actors. So you're never like sitting there miserable because you're watching bad actors. Like, and the movie is only 90 minutes, is very briskly paced, probably too brisk early on actually, because I'd like more development. But at the very least, it was never a chore to watch. Like, you know, it never got like that engrossing in like a deep way or anything like that, and it never became like something that I was super into. But it was never like hard to watch, like I don't know, what's the movie recently, the Prodigy. It was never The Prodigy where I was sitting there going, oh, I wish this would end. I was still always at least vaguely intrigued by what was going on and where it was going.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah, like you know, I feel like it was never boring at any point, and like, even though you wanted more, you know, it's still like, you know, was intrigued enough to like, oh, I want to see where this is going.
It's like you were hungry and there's just this crappy burger place. You eat the burger and the fries, and it's not the greatest thing ever. It's not even particularly satisfying, but it wasn't, you know, disgusting to eat, and it went down, and you're at least not hungry anymore. Like that, like that's how I would describe this movie, with a couple of blemishes of like good other things in there, mainly the violence and the gore. Because there's a couple of others. I also, on that front, actually, I would say because the kills are the best stuff in the movie, I think something that could have saved it, not in like a this is a good movie way, but in something that'd be more easily recommended to horror fans way, would be another couple of kills. I think the ones that are there are really good, but it could have maybe used maybe 2 more just to, like, you know, even it out a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Yeah, sorry, I was just looking up one of the actors in it because I was like, I know I recognize her from somewhere, but I couldn't remember where.
Who are we talking about?
To look. The guidance counselor.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I recognized her from the show Search Party. And I was like, I couldn't remember where I knew her from yesterday.
And not American Pie presents The Book of Love, not that?
No, not that one.
Just checking.
Although she was in Hits as well, which was a comedy from several years ago that I saw that was good too. But
her husband's the guy that I always just remember because he's got a voice that's very distinct.
Oh yeah, he's been in a couple of things, but he was like in Breaking Bad was probably his big thing.
Oh yeah, I remember him in that. Oh yeah, because he was one of like Jesse's like friends, right?
Yeah. But he was in The Office as well though, so you got a couple of Office alums. He's
apparently going to be a voice in the Final Fantasy VII remake, if that's.
Ooh, Kate Sith maybe.
Oh dear. So the movie's decent. I wouldn't say don't watch it if you're interested in the premise. I think it's well worth a cheap rental or whatever just to like sit through it. I don't regret watching it. There's some mid-credit stuff that actually made me laugh a lot, which we'll talk about when we get to spoilers. But it's okay. Like if I'm summing up in a word, it's okay.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad that it exists, but it would have been. It just feels like it was just missing that little bit of extra stuff that could have made you go like, oh wow, like this is really cool. Like instead you just get like, all right, this is fine.
Yeah, I guess going back to The Boys again is that I think that it also suffers a little bit from having watched The Boys, because The Boys is surprisingly really good. I'd recommend it. It's got a lot of, because I was worried when The Boys was the trailers were coming out. I thought it was going to be just edgy. I was getting like Kick-Ass 2 kind of vibes from it, the trailers.
Well, the problem is that I don't know if you read it, but The Boys comic book is like awful, and no offense, but I'm like probably one of the biggest like Garth Ennis fans. Like he's like one of my like all-time favorite writers. Like I love Preacher, his run on Hellblazer, Hitman, Punisher. Like I think he's just a phenomenal writer, but. The Boys are just like so like edgelordy, like, oh, aren't superheroes messed up? Like, look how dumb and stupid they are. And we're going to make like, gay jokes and like, have all this edgy stuff in it. It's so bad. Well,
let me tell you this then. It's a lot more Kick-Ass one, and they've taken the source material and given it a lot more heart, and it has a lot more. It has a lot more to say. Like it's actually got a lot of great like themes running throughout it. And from everything I've heard, it sounds like it's better than the book from people who. There's some people who love the book who also love the show, but there's a lot of people who don't like the book that much that do love the show.
And to be fair, I didn't read the entire series. Like I think I stopped maybe. Like I did read a decent amount, like maybe like 20 to 30 issues in, but. I don't know. Maybe I think that's about halfway through though. So maybe it gets better in the back half, because I don't want to disparage, Garth Ennis, because again I love his writing, but man, the book just didn't do it for me. But I've also heard good things about it though. It does make me a little upset though, because I mean, if we ever get a sequel where we have multiple Brahms, they're not going to be able to call it The Boys.
Actually, on that subject, Tim, do you know what I did this past weekend, or just during the week?
You rewatched The Boy
on the stream? No. When I was streaming to the kind viewers at home, the Male Fuzz TV universe, if we're calling them that.
We're not, but okay.
I discovered that I could censor certain words, and I censored the word Brahms, so anyone who types a comment with the word Brahms in it just doesn't appear.
Well, then you're probably like not seeing any comments.
Just because I thought it'd be funny. Someone did point out though that I'll forget that I've done that, and then when The Boy 2 comes out, I'll be wondering why there's no comments on the video. Like, this is weird. No one's commenting on The Boy 2 review.
And the boy fam is strong. We are one solidified voice, and we will not be censored.
The boy fam. I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe it, Tim. So we should probably give a spoiler warning and start working through some of the movie and talk about things we think are interesting. Because the movie just, it starts with just, like we hear the rocket kind of land and they get up to check. It's like 10 years later, they've got a kid now. And, he's normal at first. Because unlike Superman, it doesn't seem like he's ever had powers before. Like, he just kind of gets them all at once.
Well, yeah, but it was a little weird because it seems like he gets them all at once, but then also there's like the scene where the dad's like, it seems like he's thought something was wrong for years because he's like, he's never bled once, like since he was a baby.
That's true.
It's kind of like, all right, well, what do we?
I guess he's been kind of impenetrable his whole life, but all his his flying, his heat vision, all the super strength, all that stuff didn't really kick in until now.
That's like
I'd go.
Well, I think like another problem we have is like we don't really see him kind of like getting the realization that he has powers. Like there's a few times that he does stuff, but like again, since he's just such a kind of like boring blank slate of a character, you don't really see him react or try to deal with it or go talk to his parents about it. Like, I don't know, I feel like we need maybe more of that stuff. Like maybe have him be excited about it, and maybe he's going to his parents, and then his parents are the ones that are trying to like, be like, well, no, like don't, like, you can't do that kind of stuff.
Because the way it plays it is that the parents don't even really, because they start to suspect, like the dad especially starts to suspect things after a while, but it's not like Superman where his parents know the entire time that he's got these powers. They kind of just slowly realize it, but not because he tells them, just because they start to notice things.
And that's actually like a big source of like frustration to me, because I hate when they do this in movies where it's just like, all right, is this couple just not talking to each other? Because he's doing stuff where like, he's chewing a fork in his mouth and he's like bending it, and it's like wouldn't the dad make a bigger deal about that? And wouldn't he bring that up, to his wife, instead of where, you have to have the scene like, a couple of scenes later where, one suspects and the other's like, you're crazy. That's our child you're talking about. It's like, give me a break.
I want to talk about, because they find some dirty photos under his mattress, right? And he's about that age where he's just getting into that, and he and the dad's just kind of like, oh well, this was going to happen eventually, and it's just some spank material. But then they keep like flipping through the pages, and eventually they get to some like animal mutilation and stuff like that, and it's like, this is a bit less healthy. This is odd. But
the parents are very kink shady.
Yeah, they go camping, right? And the dad's a hunter, and it's all this stuff, and it's very Midwest, like, because the uncle even buys the kid like a rifle for his birthday. He's like 12, like.
Well, here's what another thing that's kind of annoying is like he makes such a big deal about like not wanting the gun. When it's like obvious, that they're in this Kansas town, and it seems like it is a place where people hunt, and that's kind of an accepted thing. But then like he has such an over the top reaction to like when the uncle gets him the gun for a present. He's like, I said no guns. That you feel like it would be a plot point later on where he has something against guns, or maybe he has like a past with guns that he forbids them. But then it's just like a couple of scenes later, he's in the woods shooting with his son with a gun, where it's like, all right, why do you care about this?
I guess he just feels strongly about the age of which he will start using guns. I have to imagine that's how he feels that way.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like such a weird reaction that he just later like doesn't even comment about or anything.
I don't want 12-year-olds with guns, just for the record.
I think it's probably more accepted, like maybe in like certain like hunting areas.
Sure.
And again, like if you're that against it, why take your son out hunting with you? Like a couple of scenes later.
Yeah, I guess he just wants to like teach him, like really teach him the rules, and like sort of make him respect the idea of having. I don't know. But anyway, what I want to talk about though is he takes him out hunting. They're sort of sitting there, and he's just kind of like aiming and waiting for the deer or whatever. And he he starts talking about, he wants to bring up the subject of puberty, and he wants to have to talk. And because at one point he actually says the line, "It's okay for you to play with it," and he's like, "Play with what?" Your penis. You like to play with your penis. But anyway, there's another line that really bugged me here, just in the sense where I feel like he's a bit of a, not that he's a bad dad in general, but here he's kind of a shitty dad, and he's not specific enough about something, and it really bugged me because he's talking about, you're going to like notice girls on TV or maybe in your class, and you're going to and he says the line, "It's okay to give into your urges sometimes," and I thought, be specific and say you're talking about masturbating, because it really sounded like you're just priming him for sexual assault there. Like it really it sounded like you were saying, give into your urges and just go for it. Like no, and I get what he means, it came off sounding like, no, he is 12, make this clear, make it clear what you're saying it's okay to do.
Yeah, and is that when he says, like, what you mean right now?
Yeah, he says, yeah, you mean right now.
And what's kind of weird is like the scene is like kind of played off as like, it's supposed to be funny, which would be fine, except for like there's no other like humor in the movie. Like you said earlier, like the movie takes itself really seriously, so it's kind of weird. I feel like to have just like this one little instance of humor where everything else is like so kind of serious and dour.
Yeah. You mean like right now? There's a scene in this where he's like, "Hey, you're saying I can masturbate right now?" And he's like, "No, not right now. Not with me standing next to you in private."
So I guess my big question in the movie is are we to believe that like he was a totally normal, fine kid before, and that it's the ship that's making him do this?
Yeah, I mean, the impression seems to be that the ship awakens. Like it's like he's a sleeper agent who's been sent to like take over the planet, and the ship's like, kill everyone, and it just makes him evil, and that's it, he's gone. Okay. But at the same time, it's kind of murky because it does feel like he's going after things that he cares about, because he has this crush on this girl, so because it's this night after he's had this talk where, because he's like, it's okay to satisfy your urges, he sneaks into the girl's room because she said one nice thing to him at one point, because at this point I thought, maybe it's going to say something about male entitlement or toxic masculinity or something like that, and it never really does, but he sneaks into her bedroom. Yeah, and she kind of sees him, but he does like horror movie cliches where he sort of swoops in and like turns her laptop on and like lets music play from it, and then when she turns around after turning it off, he does it again. So it's very much it's the classic haunted house scene of the music playing on its own.
Which like it just felt like what is the reason for this? Like, okay, so if he does like this girl, surely he has to know that like, he's not doing something that she would like he's specifically like being creepy. I don't know, I guess maybe the movie's trying to say like I don't know, maybe he's more interested in being like a weird creepy killer than he is, but like I don't know, I just feel like that's a more boring take where he's just doing like the obvious creepy kid haunted house kind of cliches versus like, it'd be more interesting if maybe he's actually trying to do good or what he thinks he should do, but he's like, messing it up, and that's causing him like frustration and confusion. And ultimately this plot like goes nowhere. Like it leads to the good death scene with his mom, but then like afterwards it's like you don't really follow up with him and that girl.
Yeah, there's not really much more to it, and because his motivation is so murky. Like, because I mean, it would be easy to say, the ship's just making him do it, but so much of it is like based and steeped upon because most of the people he kills, he kind of kills so that they won't tell anyone about him, because it's like, you can't tell my parents about this, so then he kills someone, but then after that doesn't something that matters, because he ends up going to kill his parents anyway by the end of the movie. So it's kind of weird. Here's something that bugged me. Is that early on when he first like falls into where his ship is and his mum's there, and it sets up that the ship itself can hurt him, like the metal in the ship can pierce his skin because he gets a cut in his hand. And I thought this was really weird. Like, obviously, you set things up and you have Chekhov's gun and whatever else for when you need it, but it felt so in my face, like, hey, here's the one thing that can hurt him, this will be important later, that I felt like it would have just made more sense to me in this context to just have her discover this in the final like scenes, rather than like it be something that the whole movie I'm thinking, okay, when are you going to remember that the ship can hurt him? Like,
yeah, I think it really like a lot of this stuff is just not very subtle at all. Like, yeah, that's very in your face. And then even later on in the movie, they make like Elizabeth Banks' character like actually say out loud, like, "Wait, the ship can hurt him." That's it. Like, it's like, so. Oh, hey, we got it. The scene was very obvious earlier. You don't have to, telegraph it that much. And I feel like there's other examples of that too, like where, like you see her like finding his notebook where he's like actually drawn his murders. Like, yes, it's like, come on, like even like a crazy serial killer or whatever probably doesn't have like something just out in the open where he's like, here's what I did and here's how I did it. Here's what it looked like. It's like, it's a little too much.
Yeah, the first person he really kills is the girl's mum, because he thinks she's in the way of their happiness, which is weird because he never really tries to go back to the girl after that point at any point. That's
what feels like weird about it, is it's like, all right, you should probably follow up with it. But no.
So a lot of this scene's in the trailer, so like I knew how it was going to end with him like using the heat vision and ripping the door open to get to her in the freezer. What's not in the trailer though, at least not to any great extent, is the glass in the eye and the extended sequence of her pulling a piece of glass out of her eye. Which was really gruesome, and I'm like, oh, this movie's actually pretty gory. Like, I didn't realize we were going this route. So that was a pretty neat death scene, as was the eventual uncle death, because he's kind of getting after the auntie because she is also the guidance counselor at school, and he's not happy that she's going to like give a bad report to the police or whatever about what he did. So, because he crushed the girl he likes hand because she was slightly mean to him. And to be fair, she was slightly mean because she believed that he'd snuck in her house already. As far-fetched as that sounded, like she was definitely scared of him.
Yeah, no, I mean, and she definitely has every right to be, but at the same time though, like if I was her, wouldn't you think like it's weird that her first like thought is like, oh no, he was definitely in my room, and she lives on the second floor, so it'd be like, it'd be so impossible. You'd think she would probably just chalk it up to like some weird hallucination or like kind of waking dream or something that she had, but she is like very like adamant, like, no, he was definitely there.
It's hard to judge this because what he does is so unbelievable, and she only gets like a quick glimpse of him that, like, I buy that she would be scared of him. Whether or not she goes too far with like how much she's convinced that he was there, it's really hard to decide in the real world context because like it's so that'd be like, I saw someone flying past my window and giving me the finger. Like, I can believe I saw it, but like it's so silly and ridiculous that I would just probably convince myself that I must have been imagining it, kind of thing.
Also, like, the bullies in this are weird, where it's like, they're doing that like trust exercise in the gym, and like, so she backs away and he falls and like lands on his head with a really big thud, and like it's funny that the kids just immediately start like making fun of him for it. It's like, no, if that really happened, you'd be like, oh my god, like, is this kid alive? Like, but the kids are just like instantly like, oh, what a loser. He almost got a concussion.
That gym teacher had no control over that class. I'm just putting that out there right now. Just put that out there. At least they're not Annie's an orphan, Annie's an orphan. I will always judge school bullies compared to Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. Always. Annie's an orphan, Annie's an orphan. That said, Freddy's Dead was also I mean, that review won't be up until October, but let's just say there's a similar chant in that that tickled my funny bone. So he kills the uncle, and he does so because the uncle is kind of like angry at him, and he's trying to get him in the car, and then he realizes that he's strong because he gets thrown against the wall or whatever, and he tries to run away by driving away from him. And of course, being a Superman type character, Brandon just picks up the car from the back up to a certain height. He sort of flies fairly high up and then drops it to the ground, front of the car first, and we get this great shot of the uncle's face like hitting the steering wheel, and then he's alive for a little bit, and his entire jaw is just hanging off of his face. It's actually kind of glorious. It's a really brutal
really
death.
Good. Yeah.
Best scene of the movie. I'll say it. It's the best scene of the movie. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I like this one because I could actually look at it. Like the eye scene was great, but I had trouble like looking at it. I was kind of like, it was a little too much for me. But yeah, this was really good. And again, like this is, I think what's cool about these movies is you can do like a lot of deaths that are, that you don't typically see in horror movies. And like, yeah, I never really had seen or thought of this idea of like, like you could just pick up a car and like just fly up a little bit and drop it, and that's like very brutal, very scary, and like you're just so helpless in the car. Really great. Although I did have a question too, so I forgot about this. So are part of his powers that he can like turn machines on and off?
I don't think so. Why?
Well, because like anytime he's around, like machines always start going haywire. Like lights start flickering on and off. And then I wasn't sure if he couldn't start his car, and I didn't know if it's because he rammed into it or because again if he has some like weird powers. But it's like every time like a death scene's going on, like people's like lights and stuff start getting on the fritz.
Every time the power went out, I just assumed he cut the power like by cutting the power. I never took that as a power. I took that as him just super speeding to the junction box and just being like, bleh.
Maybe, I guess.
Yeah, I never took that as a. I mean, maybe it is. I mean, it doesn't really matter that much.
Yeah.
I guess it's because it's not in Superman's arsenal. I just assume that all his powers match Superman.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's what I figured. Like, it seemed weird that if that would be like the one thing that's like different between him and Superman. But like, I don't know. It happens so often that I was just like, all right, is it just because he's around here, or?
I wish there was more inspiration for why he wants to wear a mask and a cape, because he doesn't. He's just kind of drawing it at one point, and that's just kind of it. He's got this mask and cape, this creepy mask. And I'm like, why not have him like grow up watching slasher movies or something? Like have him like idolize serial killers or something. I don't know. Like have him make a choice. Like give him some character trait that leads to this.
Yeah, especially since like I don't know, it seems like. The mask and cape is creepy, but then he's not really like hiding like anything else about him, and then he even lets people like take off the mask and stuff like multiple times. That it seems like kind of weird thing that he's into.
Yeah.
Also, it's like, oh wait, Brightburn is the name of the town. Like,
yes, okay. Brightburn, Kansas. So it's in Kansas, just like Smallville, just for the record.
Yeah.
Just to keep the themes going there. Because obviously we get to the point where the dad like kind of suspects that he's behind a lot of stuff, and even discovers some proof, and he basically decides to take him out to hunting for like just a trip, the two of them, so he can kill him. And obviously we know how this is going to go, but the dad essentially shoots him in the back of the head with his rifle, and the kid just kind of like holds the back of his head like it maybe stung a little bit, and stands up and looks at him shocked, and he tries to reload and shoot him again, and of course he just runs and he has no chance, and he is killed with heat vision to the eyes, to the face, to the point where it eventually comes out the back of his head. We see the heat vision like come right through. So another fun death. Like all the deaths that are here are actually really good. But this is pretty much them outside of a couple of cops that get killed as Elizabeth Banks is like running around in the final act.
Yeah, I guess the only thing he didn't really use was like some type of ice breath, I guess.
Yeah,
which it could have been cool, but.
Hey, that's one that even Superman movies often just don't bother using, because they just...
It's true.
It's the goofiest one, I guess, because they don't feel like they know how to fit it in, which is fine. He uses heat vision a lot, he uses super speed and strength a lot, and he's flying, obviously. So obviously at this point, like Elizabeth Banks, who was defending him to a point, then finds proof from you said the drawings of all the murders, and it's like, oh shit, it's him. And
he also calls her on the phone and basically tells him that he killed the dad.
Yes. And he then of course comes to get her, but the sheriff and that show up, and the sheriff gets killed by, he basically just flies through the sheriff at super speed. That's all that happens. You just see him swoop past, and then you look around the corners, it's like a blood stain like all over the porch. So
yeah, I thought that was pretty cool too.
yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a lot simpler looking, but it's actually a pretty fun idea that he can just swoop through people like that. And then the other cop gets like ragdolled around in the background. This one's probably the least interesting one, but still, you know, has some fun to it.
Yeah,
has some fun. To it.
Yeah, it's a good visual, but it's kind of like, I think maybe it would have been better if there was like, if it was one of like 5 cops there, and that was just like one of the deaths. Like, whereas like, yeah, since you do have kind of a small body count, you want each one to be a really, interesting, unique kind of thing.
Yeah, they should have totally done just a few more cops at the end, just to give us some more collateral, some more gruesome deaths, please. So maybe because some of them are kind of inventive, so it would be funny to do some more inventive kills with them. But
yeah.
She of course realizes, because I think her running around the house and hiding stuff, because I guess we never really get a sense that he has X-ray vision, even though that's obviously one of Superman's big powers. But you always get the sense that he probably knows where she is, and he's just kind of playing with her a little bit, and you kind of feel like she's kind of hopeless. But she does get to the ship. She gets off a piece of the metal, which I guess it's lucky that it's so easy to pull off. Like, she gets this sharp bit of metal from the ship, but yeah, she goes to stab him. She's sort of hugging him, saying everything's okay, I love you, and then he catches her though, and her death is that he just flies her up really high into the sky and lets her go, which isn't as obviously fun from a gruesome way. I actually quite like the idea of this death. I think it was filmed incorrectly though, because they do the whole thing where it's the shot looking down at her, she's falling in slow motion, and it's just so generic. And there's a shot before this where when he flies up with her, it's just this big wide shot from the side, and I almost think all they should have done here is let her drop in this wide shot, and don't cut to another shot, just have this big wide shot of him holding her up in the sky, and then just see her body fall. No sound effect, no nothing, just see her fall in this wide shot, because that'd be really easy to do in CG, because it just it's quite in the distance. Whatever.
Yeah, it's I'm the same. It was a little cheesy. But I mean, it's not a bad way to go, but it just didn't look great. It was
just the execution. It was just the cheesy slow motion and all that. I think just one stark wide shot with just silence as we see her fall from the sky would have been great. But and then he sees a plane coming, and you're like, oh shit, what's going to do with the plane? He uses the plane to cover his tracks. He makes it look like a plane came out of the sky and landed into the house and killed everyone, and he is now no longer a suspect. And that's basically the end of the movie. It's just him eating a cookie while the first responders are all like around doing whatever they're doing. I mean, we skipped over a couple of things, like he kills the chickens at one point, and the dad thinks it's him. And that, there's a couple of little scenes like that we've kind of glossed over, but that was the main gist of it. Where I had fun though in the credits, because Michael Rooker has a cameo at the end here, where he's like a Fox News style kind of pundit, where he's
Alex Jones kind of person.
Yeah, Alex Jones, that's the guy I'm thinking of. Not that he's on Fox News, but similar. What is God? What's his thing called?
Like a conspiracy theorist kind of.
No, his show's got a name that everyone.
Oh, I can't remember.
Anyway, it was basically that. But it was Michael Rooker, but he's talking about how there's all these stories, there's conspiracies. There's this superpowered being who's killing people, and we hear news of like ships being destroyed and entire buildings and so on and so on. But the fun thing here is that they really play with this, where he's like, oh, and there's also rumors of like a witchy woman with a rope that kills people, and I'm like, wait. Is that evil Wonder Woman? And then you see like 6 photos on the screen, and one is clearly Aquaman, one's clearly the Flash. There's a question mark, which I assume is Batman because he's so mysterious, and then there's one that's probably Cyborg. And what I think is really fun about this is that it's the exact lineup of the Justice League movie. There's no Green Lantern. It's the exact Justice League movie cast. Evil versions of them, which I thought was pretty funny. Yeah. So that's neat. I mean, it didn't do very well, so we're never going to get a sequel with any of the other characters or anything like that, but
it's a nice setup for if you do a sequel and you want to expand it, like, yeah, sure, why not? But yeah, and it still serves as like just a nice little gag to end on.
At least in this universe, it makes sense that the Batman wants to kill the Superman.
I definitely.
It's like, yeah, he's just murdering people. Yeah, take him out. He's a problem. No, really neat. And I was surprised I never played with the idea of him having a weakness outside of the ship metal, I guess. But there was never a kryptonite, you know. There was never something that can do that. But hey ho. So, as far as the movie as a whole goes, I feel like it's really difficult to recommend wholeheartedly. I think there's some fun kills in it, and it's not a bad watch. It's a really easy watch. And you've got dependable actors, so it's never difficult to get through or anything like that. But at the same time, like, The Boys just came out, and for something to explore the idea of a Superman that doesn't have Superman's conscience, that is a much better story for that, because he's actually scary. He's actually much scarier than the character in this, because he's scary in kind of like a charming way, where you know that if you piss him off, he might murder you. He may murder thousands of people if you piss him off. Whereas this is just a bit more like generic horror movie, which is a fun premise, and it's fun at parts to watch, and it's definitely easy to watch the whole time, but it never really goes beyond that or really says anything about anything. It's just, you know, I think after I saw the trailer, says, well, that was a really funny idea for a trailer, but is it going to justify the whole movie? And my answer is kind of, and the movie wasn't, like I say, a bad watch, but at the same time, like, yeah, this could have been a 10-minute short where you just cut the various big scenes together, and that could have been the whole thing, and I'd have gotten the same amount of like chuckles out of it, essentially.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm pretty much on the same page. Like, you know, it's fine. You know, it's a good one-time watch. It probably won't really feel much of a need to, you know, revisit, at least not for, you know, a good while. And yeah, it's I guess if anything, maybe it's a little bit of a shame that it kind of squanders, you know, what it could have been like a really cool, unique, interesting, you know, idea, and, you know, kind of just goes maybe like the easy route where, you know, there's just not much depth to it, unfortunately. But I mean, maybe that sounds like too negative, but I guess, you know, again, you know, from the trailer and the premise, and, you know, from liking comic books and horror movies and stuff, you know, I think I maybe had a little more hope for this than what we eventually got. You know, it's better than having something that just, you know, is completely bad, but, you know, it's a shame that, you know, wasn't as good.
Yeah, it's worth mentioning, obviously we have Banks in this and Michael Rooker getting a cameo. They were both in Slither, which James Gunn did, because James Gunn produced this, and his brothers, Brian and Mark Gunn, I'm assuming they're his brothers, like, I didn't actually check, but they co-wrote this, and so clearly there's some, like, hey, like, obviously he's friends or has a working relationship with a couple of these actors, and that's why they ended up in the movie, kind of thing. So, you know, like, it could have been better, but it also could have been much worse, and I think we've definitely seen examples of that. So, you know, I can't be super positive about it, but I can't really, like, completely tear it apart either, ultimately. So, yeah, it's okay. So I guess for rating it, Timmy, what you giving it out of 10?
This might seem a bit low, but I think we're gonna give it a 5.5. You know, because it's I do think it, you know, is a little bit above the halfway mark, but still not enough to, you know, for me to really be too enthusiastic about it. I think maybe if there were at least maybe a few more kind of inventive kills like that, you know, it could have bumped it up a little bit at least. Yeah, like I think you kind of mentioned, like, yeah, if you know, keep it at that surface level, but at least have like more of a higher body count, then at least it can be a little bit more fun and exciting, and, you know, that might be enough to kind of amp you up. But yeah, as is, I'm just gonna go for 5.5.
Yeah, it's tough because I'm kind of in a similar logic, where it's at least a 5.5, but it is kind of tempting to stretch it to the 6, because it is an easy watch. Like, I can't say, like, I was never like annoyed. I was never like, my patience was never being tested. I just wish it had more going for it. Had more in it. Yeah.
I think, like, from like a, you know, a horror and a gore standpoint, the kills are really good. Like, you know, it's just that there's, you know, what, like 3 or 4 of them.
So I'm going to agree with the 5.5, but if we did like, because we do half points, so we can be a bit more specific. If we did like full like 10-point decimal system, I'd probably be like a 5.9 or something like that. That's probably where I'd go with it. But I don't want to round it up to the 6. I don't want to go with the 6. So 5.5 is where I'm landing as well. So. There you go. So that is Brightburn, another notable release from this year, finally covered. So cross it off the list. But that does bring an end to the discussion for the movie and essentially the review. I just got a couple of things to throw your way and tell you about before we go. Of course, let us know what you think of the movie in the comments and all that jazz, and like and subscribe. But you can, of course, send us questions both on our Twitter account, which is @StreamsMidnight, so go and follow us over there, or you can send us questions via email, mftvquestions@gmail.com, and if you do that, you can send us a nice big long question, and we'll pick some probably throughout the month of October for the Octoberthon episodes and answer a few questions on those. So feel free to send questions there. It can be about past movies we've talked about. It can be movies you know we're going to be talking about soon, or it can be just general horror questions and that kind of thing. So go and have a look for that. And I should probably start preparing you as well, because one of the things that's happening right now, as this episode's getting recording going up, is that people are sending in their top 50 movies of all time to that same email address that I just gave you. So if you want to get involved in that, you can check out my top 100 videos that I've been putting up on YouTube and get more details about that. But I think the plan for October is that it makes a lot of sense to do a horror movie version of that, where people send in their favorite horror movie lists. So I won't give you the exact rules yet. Just pay attention on the YouTube and the Twitter for details. But the idea is that people will send in their top 50 lists of horror movies, and there'll be a results show at the end of the month where we read through what the top 100 horror movies as voted for by our audience is. So okay. You can look forward to that, and there will be a countdown with me and Tim. We've not actually decided what it is yet, because we do them every October, but I've got ideas.
Okay. Yeah,
I've got ideas.
Yeah. Like if you want our personal like lists, that should be back in the feed somewhere.
Oh yeah,
we did those at some point.
Yeah, we did our top 100 horror movies for Octoberthon 2017, so you can go check out those. We did top 50 horror movies of the 80s last year for Octoberthon.
Oh, okay.
Or it was actually right after the Octoberthon, because we didn't have time because Tim was getting married last year. Otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.